short message. I'm excited to use this thing. I've never preached this thing before. So let's turn to a verse in the Bible. Let's turn to Luke chapter 12, verse 35. And you don't have to read it out. It's up here. Be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning. When I asked Pastor what I should do my message on, he texted me this. He said, being mission oriented, and so I was thinking about this for a while, and I realized it's very interesting, the word oriented, because there's a difference between being mission oriented and mission preparation or mission training. See, if the title was mission training, then that would imply that you're not in a mission, you're just about to be in one and you're getting ready for one. But being mission oriented, the word oriented, if you look it up in the dictionary, it kind of means aligned. It means you're ready, right? So this leads me on to while I was thinking about this, I was thinking about our mission, right? Our missions as Christians, and what we're called to do. And then I realized that if we're mission oriented, that means we're not waiting for a mission. We're in the mission, right? This is not an intermission. We are in the mission. Okay, so this is my title of the message, and I want to let me get back to this. How many of you, has anyone here ever done any boxing or any fighting? No, we are children of God. We are people of peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. We do not fight. Right? If you're doing any boxing, the way you stand is very important. And if I stood on my heels like this, and I was trying to fight, and I'd get punched and I'd fall over because my weight is on my heels. But when you fight, when you're boxing, they tell you to stand on your toes, like this, right? So your heels don't actually touch the floor, because in this position, that's when you're ready. You're ready for anything. You're ready to move forward or backwards or sideways, wherever you need to go, right? So the same with tennis. I'm sure some people have at least played tennis. I'm sure some of you have played tennis. I've played tennis with some of you. And there's this thing called the split stance, which is where you stand like this. It's essentially the same thing, so you can be ready wherever you need to go, whether it's to the left or to the right or backwards, wherever the ball goes. And that's essentially what I'm saying. Where you need to stop standing. Sometimes we stand like this, thinking we're not in the mission, right? Sometimes we stand like this, waiting, right? And then when something hits us, we fall backwards. But once we stand on our toes, once we stand ready, that's when we're ready for anything. And I want to show you this in the story of Elisha. If we turn to 2 Kings chapter 4. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but because I got to be quick. But it's chapter 8. He goes to Shunem, which is a place, and there was a wealthy woman there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came, so he goes there a lot, and every time he goes there for a meal. And this time the woman asked him to stay over for a little bit. Let's make him a small room on the roof, and put a bed in it. So he used to come here all the time, right? And Elisha didn't come here with a mission. He didn't come there in order to preach every time. He just was going through that town, or was doing something else in that town maybe, but he was staying in that room for the night, right? But then he goes on, and then he's in this house, in the room, and he's just there to sleep and eat. And he says, and he asks the woman, and he prophesies to her, right? Elisha could have been like, I'm not preaching right now, I'm going to sleep, right? I'm not going to prophesy, I'm going to rest. But he wasn't on his heels, he was on his toes. He was always ready. So when the time came, or whenever he was ready to prophesy, to say, you will have a son, right? And also, like Samuel, the Lord, he was lying in bed, and the Lord called him, and the Lord said, Samuel, and he went to Eli and said, what is it? He was on his feet, on his heels. And then Eli said it wasn't me, and so he went back and said, and the Lord spoke to him again, and again he went back to Eli, and he was on his heels. But the third time, God spoke to him. Samuel was ready. At that point, he said, Lord, what is it you want from me? And wherever, I want to ask you if you've ever been called, or maybe you've just been missing your calling because you've never been ready. You've always been waiting for your mission, waiting for God to talk to you and say, okay, go out. Right now you're working, or you're in school, and there's nothing you can do. Just at some point later in the future, maybe God will call you and ask you to speak to people. Evangelism isn't something you go out to do. It's a way you live, right? I want to talk about one of my most favorite scenes in the Bible, and it's about Paul and Silas. Initially there, let's Acts 16. So initially they're out what everyone else would see as a mission, right? They're out preaching, spreading the good word of the good news, and they're prophesying and casting demons out. And then this one girl starts annoying them, and anyone with a younger sister knows how annoying a little girl can be. And so eventually they get frustrated and they say, come out. They cast the demon out. They cast the demon out. And so they're in this mission, and they're doing lots of good work, and suddenly they get thrown into prison. And then, so it seems like they were in the mission, or on a mission from God, and then they got put into a prison, so that mission ended. Right? And sometimes we feel like we're in a prison. Like maybe we used to give money to the poor, or maybe we used to show love to someone else, but our financial situation, our family situation, something came up, and suddenly we're in a prison, and we don't feel like we can do the same work anymore. Right? But Paul and Silas, this is really interesting. Paul and Silas, they weren't thinking like that. They, as soon as they were in the prison, this dark prison, they started singing and praising, and then the chains came off and the prison doors flew open. But that's not my favorite part. If we read about verse 25 onwards, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was a violent earthquake, that the foundations of the prison were shaking, and once the prison doors flew open, everyone's chains came loose. And it seems like something's missing. Nowhere there does it say Paul and Silas left the prison. Verse 27 says, the jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners has escaped. And if you were a prisoner and the prison doors flew open, I'm sure you'd escape. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We're all here." That's crazy to me. But thinking about this, that makes sense, because they were in the mission, and then they were put in a prison. But they thought to themselves, this is not an intermission, we are still in the mission, right? They went into that prison ready. An amazing thing happened, because they still believed this was the plan of God. And in verse 29, the jailer called for the lights and rushed in and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. And then verse 30, he says, he then brought them out and said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Even where you are, whatever it is, even when the mission seems to be over or the mission seems to be impossible, you are still called to be there. God knows exactly where you are, and God has placed opportunities there for you to do His work. Right? This is not an intermission. You are in the mission. I'm going to go to 1 Corinthians 7, verse 17. Nevertheless, each person should live in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them, just as God has called them. See, we spend so long waiting for the calling. Maybe we're sitting preparing for some later time where we might get to talk to people or get to show God's love. But 1 Corinthians 7 verse 17 says God has called. He's already called you. We are a royal priesthood, a chosen nation. God makes all good things work together for those who love Him and who are called according to His purpose. So, there are hundreds of complaints that have gone through my mind, and I've heard other people, and I'm sure you're thinking, like, I don't speak English, or I don't have the opportunity, or I don't have the resources. Did the Samaritan need resources or even language to help the man who was beaten up by the robbers on the road? No, in fact, this is really interesting, because he wasn't going there to pick up people who were beaten up. He was on the way to somewhere else, but he was ready, and he went and he saw the man and he picked him up and he gave him aid. And Pastor also, I'm going to close really quickly. Pastor also, when I texted him, he said mission-oriented and giving aid to those in need. And if we go back to my first verse, back to Luke 12, a couple verses before, it says, sell your possessions and give to the poor. This is 2 verses after, be dressed ready for service. It's not a coincidence that God talks about giving aid to the poor and then being ready for service. See, when you are ready, when you realize that where you are is where you've been called to be, that's when you can give aid to those in need. You can love like Christ loved. You can share His love. You can even evangelize to people, as we saw in the skit. Don't miss your opportunity. So I'm just going to close by saying this. Stop living in the intermission, waiting for an admission, transmission for your mission. Instead, live in submission, for you are in the mission. Just wherever you are, you've been called by God. No matter what it feels like, you've already been called. Wherever, even if you're in a place that you seem to have put yourself in, right? It doesn't seem to be the work of God. It seems to be your own doing, right? Whether that's triumph or failure, it's your own doing. You've still been called, and it is still your mission. So don't live like you were in the intermission, but live as if you've been called and you're in the mission. Thank you.